Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. It's Friday, August, what is it, the 25th already? And it's about East Coast time, 6:40. How are you guys doing? I'm Patty Lee. I am doing my True Crime Grapevine daily headlines live because right now I have two little new kittens and it's hard to do uploads. So I'm just doing lives, but I'm going to get back to doing uploads instead. But bear with me. But I'm still, there's so much crime and not enough time. I watch YouTube, check out Twitter, read like a New York Times article, Rolling Stone, and about all the major cases. And then like any good gossip, I sit right down here in this is my porch swing, but wherever my armchair detective spot is, and I let you know what's on the grapevine. So, if you're interested in hearing about the headlines every day, go ahead, like, subscribe, all the YouTube things. I call it my daily wine. I used with an H, but wine. I just need about, I think, a half glass each day. It's supposed to be heart healthy. So, let's get into what's been going on. And cheers to the weekend. So the biggest case, one of the biggest case, is the Timothy Hazlitt case from Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Now, I covered this case. It is in my previous uploads. It was from October of last year. Hidden True Crime was one of the first channels, not only who talked about it, who then Lauren somehow got some reporting with people there. Anyways, she got the scoop, I believe, from the woman who found there was a missing girl. Excuse me. So there was a sex worker who had been missing from Kansas City. People were trying to report it, but because of being a marginalized person, it wasn't really going anywhere. So the community in Kansas City, which is about, I think, an hour from Excelsior Springs, Missouri, just across the river, her community was worried about her, but nobody else really knew, and it wasn't like on the grapevine at the time. So on the morning of, I forget which day in October, but she escaped. She had been being held. You'll see on other channels, they call it a sex dungeon. But if you're into true crime, and I assume you are if you're watching this channel, you might remember there's been a number of cases. I think one was called The Girl in a Box, where the guy kept this woman, like grabbed her, kept her in a box, SAR'd her like for a very long time and like just kept her prisoner. And there was the case where the man grabbed the woman and kept her on his property in a container, and eventually they found her. I believe there was a murder related to it, and they finally went on this man's property and she had been chained and kept prisoner. So unfortunately, grabbing somebody, I don't know why the term sex dungeon bothers me. I think because it sounds kind of like a party place from the 70s, sex dungeon, and not really like this person was kept prisoner. She was abducted. She was, there was contact that was supposed to be consensual. And I don't know if it was monetarily motivated or not, but he went into Kansas City and picked up this woman and took her back to his house and did not let her leave for months. So this woman escapes. She's a Black woman. She's only, I believe she's 22. She weighed 74 pounds by this time. She is dressed in scantily clad like lingerie, but has a metal collar, like she's been hooked and kept prisoner. She had escaped, and it's still unclear exactly. It was first reported that Timothy Hazlitt was taking his son to school, and while in the line, the drop-off line, she escaped. And then she ran down the street, the first house she went to, and it's a nice, like, quiet neighborhood. The first house, they're like, okay, what is this woman with no clothes on and chains around her neck, and she's screaming? The person didn't want to let her in. Kind of like how we heard about when Shannon Gilbert out in Gilgo Beach, or she was at Oak Beach, but she was running around that community. And the one woman who had her older mom in the house, she just wasn't sure what was going on. So she didn't want to let somebody in because what if it was a ruse, or what if that person was out of control and hurt her? So similarly, but then she went to the next house, and a grandma who was babysitting was like, oh my gosh, come in. And he's like, he's going to get me. He's like, okay. So that's how the police are called. That's how Timothy Hazlitt is fingered. When he comes home, the police, they find him, they arrest him. I forget what his bond was at that time, but many people were saying, especially the community activists in that area, were saying this street, yeah, some people are sex workers, but some people are just young. Some people are homeless. Some people are just out. But they're not wealthy, and they do happen to be African American. And in Kansas City, them disappearing wasn't this activist. And if you go to my upload, I talk about his name. I think he's a reverend. He was saying, nobody's paying attention to us, and it's not just this young lady. There's been a number of them, and then this had happened previously. Another so Timothy Hazlitt is alleged, but there's another case, like another serial killer working in Kansas City. I think that was with men, but in that same area. So this area had experienced this before, where like people are disappearing off the street. It's not aliens. Police going to do anything? And the police are busy. So, but this gets a lot of national attention. And when they're looking at his house, if you paid attention to the coverage in October, there was all these blue barrels. And the young girl was also very insistent that her friend was dead, was missing. Something had happened. Like it sounded like there were other people involved, but then we never heard anything about it. And we heard a little bit more about like his background and the situation, but the case wasn't back in the news, like how some cases are in the news more often. Well, now, July 30th, they asked for an increase in Timothy Hazlitt's bond to $3 million, saying that he was a danger to society, to the community at large, and that, he really needed to be kept in jail. What had happened? Well, also on July 30th, a body had been ID'd, a body that was found in a blue barrel in the Missouri River. And the woman had been identified, and the woman's name is Janie. I want to say her last name correctly. Janie Crosdale. And Janie Crosdale was a known person to the investigators in the Timothy Hazlitt case. They had ID'd her as someone who had contact with Timothy Hazlitt. She wasn't specifically called a victim because they were trying to get more information from her. She was a witness who had been to Timothy Hazlitt's house during the time period, or they said prior to, when this October escape from the, being abducted out of the basement where she was chained up. She visited sometime prior to that. So they're thinking, they wanted to know what she heard. It sounded like maybe she was telling them something, but before she could maybe testify, she goes missing. Now, the police said they don't think that the two victims knew each other, but they said they're very similar, which I take it to mean they're probably both in the same industry. And that's why they were saying she had, contact with Timothy Hazlitt. They weren't sure if she was a victim, but obviously maybe he said, hey, I'd like you to engage with my, pet in the basement or something. We don't know. That is all my imagination, supposition. But whatever reason, when the police, I don't know, we don't know if she went to the police or the police found her, but Then she comes up swimming with the fishes. Well, not really swimming, because in a very distinctive blue barrel. So that happened earlier in July, but it's just breaking now in all the YouTube, and it's getting some traction because we remember this case and it was cray. So he's got a higher bond. His son, that somebody had asked on another show on YouTube, hey, why did this freak have his son? Well, he had a custody battle with his ex-wife, or the mother, and he had gotten custody, and they said it was a very bad custody battle. I don't know, perhaps she had been in the industry and he somehow used that against her as character, whatever, and whatever. But that little boy, he was, I believe, in first grade. He was 6. He is not with, I mean, he's back with his mom. She has custody. Let's hope she didn't see he didn't hear. But they don't, children witnesses are difficult because the defense will be cruel to them on the stand, even unintentionally, by questioning their veracity, and then kids tend to fold. So I don't think he could have maybe informed, but he couldn't be a witness. But let's hope he didn't witness or hear too much. So yes, Janie Crosdale, then victim number 2, and we're assuming, and we, the true crime community, and I am sure you at home, are going to assume if there's 2, there's probably 3, probably 4. So that is what's going on with there. That was one of the big headlines. That is, these things happen prior to when YouTube starts, it starts getting like popular, and people, as soon as something gets popular, the algorithm that everybody talks about, so, like, subscribe, it puts my show out into the algorithm. It also lets the creators on this side, like, I can look up, at least when I do something, it shows how much interest there was. So if you want, as a creator, you can like chase the smoke dragon, as one might say. Speaking of, that's an opium sort of idiom there, metaphor. But people will follow whatever story, even when it's like no longer got anything new happening, because there's clicks. I don't tend to, as you can probably tell, I'm not driven by clicks. I just want to relate. I watch all this true crime. You are the people that I am going to tell about it, because everybody in my everyday life, I'm a mom of 3. I'm a pet mom. I'm a knitter. I'm a book person. Nobody's really that interested in, like, oh my God, did you hear about, they caught the list killer, or Timothy Hazlitt had another victim, they think, and a blue, a lot of people are not. I am sure you all have experienced that. Not everybody is excited about true crime. So that's what this space here is, for us to share that. And I'm just a person telling you about what's going on, because there is so much crime and not enough time. And I will try to let you know where to go for a more in-depth story about this. So with the Timothy Hazlitt case, a lot of people have been now talking about that. So that's why I'm telling you, because it was back in the headlines, and all the YouTubers started talking about it. So I looked it up. So it really started kicking off publicly early August. So now we are, what is it? The 25th. I mean, this was about 2 weeks ago. I'd say that's about the time it takes to get into the zeitgeist of YouTube. About a week and a half, when it gets reported in some local newspaper, and depending on how big the story was or how crazy it was, that's what happens next. All right. So another big headline. The BTK, in about 10 minutes, I believe. I think it's around 7. Anyways, Surviving the Survivor is having a live with Carrie Rawson, who is BTK, who is also known as Dennis Rader. She's speaking, and she actually had a part in helping the police find more, what they think allegedly are more victims of her dad's. So she's a pretty amazing person, and you can follow her on Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called, Carrie Rawson. And she's Often a guest on Surviving the Survivor. She's also been on the interview, the what is it? Chris McDonough's program. The why am I blanking? Something interview. The interview room. There it is. So BTK, a throwback from the past. We talked a little bit about it yesterday in the throwback section because that was my theme. But Friday's forensics theme, and the forensics ID'd Timothy Hazlitt's victim that happened to be a police witness. And forensics are finding that, and different forensics, not just DNA forensics, but also like some good old fashioned work by the investigators that, you know, Dennis Rader, they went and visited him in jail and were asking him, they didn't want to ask him about this case, like, and have him brag about it or say, yeah, I know about that, and get off on it. Instead, they were asking him, well, so can you tell us, were you ever in Oklahoma? Can you tell us, this was the Osage County one, can you tell us about it? And it is very interesting how they drew out where he worked, at what time. Then they went to the company, and lots of the places didn't have paper trails anymore because it was during a time when they didn't keep digital records. It's all really interesting, but they did find out that, especially in his journal, the girl that we talked about yesterday had been grabbed. A 16-year-old girl had been grabbed from a laundromat, and he had told this investigator that he had this, one of the things he never got to do, but that he wanted to do, was like get somebody from a laundromat. And then in his journals that they looked up, and he had written something about a bad laundry day right around the time that this girl went missing in 1976. So, and there's, we'll talk more about that case, but yes, they're still talking about it. It's getting a lot of traction on the YouTube things. And because BTK's daughter, she was talking about Lisk, she was talking about the Idaho 4. So she lived with a serial killer, and usually we don't hear from family members. So go watch that interview on Surviving the Survivor. It's about, it'll say about BTK, more victims. Really very interesting. All right. And the third really big thing is this guy, his name is Thomas Randolph from Las Vegas, Nevada. One of the places they think Rex Human visited. Yeah, he had 6 wives. Now, 4 of them are dead. One is said to have been cancer. Now, I don't trust anything this guy says. So, we didn't hear from a doctor, but and one of the women died after a emergency heart surgery. But this guy wouldn't let his stepdaughter see his mom, go to the funeral, or attend the service afterwards, and she was cremated within 24 hours. But more interestingly, this black widower, as they're calling him, from this Las Vegas resident, Thomas Randolph. So he had 6 wives, 4 are dead, 2 cancer, heart surgery, but we don't know what precipitated the heart surgery. And I hate to say we don't know about it, whatever, but his first wife, so he had a previous trial in 2017 in Las Vegas for his 6th wife. She and he came home. They were supposed to go somewhere else, but they came home from a date, and he sent her in the house alone for some reason first. And he has a conflicting memory. He told the police, oh, I heard shots, and then I ran in there. And then he said, no, I didn't hear anything, and I didn't know where she was, so I went in there. But supposedly he goes in there and, oh my gosh, she's on the floor. She's been shot. And then he sees somebody. And they called this guy the Joe Exotic of true crime. And if you saw during the pandemic, Joe Exotic, very flamboyant, very over the top, kind of unbelievable in his storytelling. Not completely unbelievable because, Karen Baskin, was it? Karen Baskin. Something that shot her husband. Look at the tigers ate him or something. I don't know. I just my opinion. Don't sue me, Carol. But I it's not that he was crazy. I mean, he was a character and he did other really bad things, but I don't think it was so wrong about that. Anyway, they called this Thomas Randolph the Tiger King, and there was a 2000. You can see this 2001 Dateline miniseries, and he just like talks about how he ran after the guy and he shot him in the hallway, and he's acting it out and laughing and smiling like he's acting out a play. And then I ran into the garage and shot him, and then when he fell over, I took off his ski hat, and it was the handyman. Okay. So, actually, and so he was like, oh, he was so surprised it was this handyman. Well, listen to this. Number one, his first wife said she took the stand in his 2017 trial and said he was very violent towards me. The second wife was the one that was found tucked into bed with a gunshot to her temple, tucked into bed. And at first it was called unaliving by self. And then a handyman friend came forward and said, hey, yeah, he wanted me to kill his wife. And I said, no. So then he was put on trial, and that was in a different state. I believe that was Utah. That was in Utah. That was his second wife, put on trial, and got acquitted somehow. I don't know. But I'm trying to see the number of wives, which one. There was another wife where another handyman said this guy tried to hire him to hit that wife. And each time he's getting $400,000 of insurance that he bought, like within a short amount of time before the deaths. And the third one was the other handyman hit. He should have been called the handyman hitter instead of the Black Widow. But in all these cases, he got lots of insurance money. But the problem was, even though people believed that he did this sort of to introduce past bad acts in a trial about this sixth wife, even though it was a handyman, you could say there's a pattern. The Nevada State Supreme Court, after he was found guilty, said, no, you have to have a whole new trial. And that's what this was. This was a whole new trial, and they couldn't bring in all those prior bad acts. But with the Dateline, with the evidence of him saying one thing, and then I couldn't hear, and then he had told the police he could hear. The fact he said he went down this hallway shooting, and he's acting out like he's, I don't know, who's a big actor, like Tom Cruise in whatever, or Jason Bourne Identity, like a crazy, he was shooting all over. There were 0 bullet holes, and there were no shell casings in the hallway. There was 1 shell casing in the garage where the handyman was dead. And he had said, like, I just shot this intruder because he got my wife. And then he lifted off, like a big reveal in a movie. And it was, oh, it was my handyman. I thought it was a stranger. Okay. The ski hat that he lifted off didn't have any blood on it, didn't have a bullet hole through it. So supposedly he shot him and then saw who it was. So you'll be glad to know, yeah, he was found guilty. Shocker. It took, at least 3 other wives with the same exact pattern of behavior. I don't know what's with people offing their spouses. You'd think, well, we know what it is. Lori Vallow could explain it to you. It's the insurance money. Just my opinion. Don't sue me. All right. So everybody this week was talking about that case because it was a big deal. He is 68 and finally off the streets. None too soon, right? There are 2 cases, and I think they both happened in Ohio. One was a 17-year-old girl at the time, and one was a 19 or 20-year-old girl. And they both killed their boyfriends. One said, it was a car crash. That's on every YouTube thing right now. Everybody's very big into that. I'll tell you that next week. And then there was another slightly older girl, 22. I think she may have had schizophrenia. I don't know. She and her baby daddy were breaking up, but he was sleeping on the couch, and she said she woke up and she thought she saw something over him, but anyways, but oh, she was stabbing the intruder, but the intruder turned out to be him. I, or maybe she was just ticked off about something and decided, I don't know. That one could go either way. Um, I would have to know way more about the evidence. We'll talk about it. But there's a lot of killing going on when people are angry with the people that they used to love. So it's the weekend. Grab your glass, relax, not too much. Don't have any weapons around you. If you're angry at somebody, go talk shit about them to their friends and family. And don't do anything that will make you end up on YouTube channels like the True Crime Grapevine. So that's me. That's my time. I'm about at half an hour. Patty Lee, please like and subscribe. I usually upload way less, but because there's been so much crime, not enough time, and I don't have time to upload, I've just been trying to do these short lives every night to let you guys know what everybody's talking about on the Grapevine. And hey, tell me what you're talking about with your friends, or what you'd like to be talking about if everybody's not interested in death and destruction like you. Go ahead and put it. I'll read the chats later, or put it in the comments, or whatever. And I will see you on the Grapevine next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.